I'm Robert Massey, and I am delighted to share with you a story this morning. It's a story of Orchestra Iowa's amazing transformation from a struggling symphony orchestra to a thriving arts enterprise. Now, 6 years ago, we faced a very bleak scenario, and unfortunately, it's one that so many cultural institutions are familiar with. And then things went from bad to worse as we were forced to navigate catastrophic flooding. But while I'll outline our response to such devastation, I don't want you to think of this as a flood recovery story, because while we were forced to re-examine our business models and develop new strategies, we were going to have to do that anyway, because our business as we knew it had stopped working, and we were failing fast. So for institutions facing similar challenges, I hope our story will encourage you not to wait for the extreme, to orchestrate your own innovation. June 1st, 2008, I joined the then Cedar Rapids Symphony. The prior year, they had had a mass exodus of staff. 4 of 6 directors left. Morale was at an all-time low. They were posting $100,000 deficits on a $1.5 million annual operating budget. Ticket sales were plummeting, contributions were plummeting, sponsorships were bailing. We had maxed out a $250,000 line of credit loan. We owed another $100,000 due to a stalled capital campaign, and we were 9 months behind in paying our bills. And as I started my first day, I at least knew that it was bad, but it couldn't get any worse. 12 days later, we were under 9 feet of water. Our building was destroyed. We lost musical instruments, production equipment, our entire office infrastructure. And most significant, we lost our home performance venue, the Paramount Theater. Now, many in the community said that this was probably going to be the end of the already fragile Cedar Rapids Symphony. And in a sense, they were right. While we were waiting for the waters to recede, we sat around a table and we started asking ourselves those tough questions. What do we do now? And why? I mean, there's so much devastation. Would anyone really care if the symphony fell silent? And then we were reminded of the very power of the performing arts, that it doesn't matter how bad a week you had at work, or what difficult situation you're struggling with at home, or maybe you just went through natural disaster. You go to a performance, even if it's for just a couple of hours, all of that disappears. We weren't just in the business of performing symphonic music, we were in the business of transforming lives, and we were needed more than ever. So just a few weeks later, with borrowed instruments and equipment, we opened our season with Beethoven Symphony No. 9. Now, we constructed a concert venue outside because none of the alternate venues we found could accommodate the size of the production. What we couldn't anticipate is that none of the venues would have been able to accommodate the size of the audience, because more than 4,000 people came out for that first cultural event post-flood. And by the end of the evening, there were 4,000 people weeping tears of joy, because it was at this moment that that community knew it was going to be all right. We would rebuild, we would recover. That's the power of the arts, and that's why we exist. And our purpose became clear. We would create exciting and impactful art, and we'd connect it to people in ways that not only further our engagement with them, but further their engagement with each other. Because as a symphony orchestra, we could perform Beethoven all day long. It's not until we put an audience in front of us that we've done our job. We'd create a plan. We'd be exciting. We'd be bold. The more exciting the production, the more successful it would be. This production, born out of necessity, has been the most popular thing we've ever done. And in fact, we open every season with it now. We still had to address the fact that we were operating with a structural deficit. After all, no money, no mission. And we were at the point where we couldn't cut our expenses any further and keep open. Now, the symphony orchestra is an incredibly inefficient business. We haven't improved in centuries. It takes the same number of musicians, the same amount of time to play a Beethoven symphony today as it did 200 years ago. I can't do much about Beethoven's orchestration. I've tried, my music director won't let me. But I can look at efficiencies. And for us, the first place we looked was economy of scale. Now, prior to the flood, the Cedar Rapids Symphony rehearsed 5 times to perform once, making that return on investment of prep time incredibly low. And so as we started to put ourselves back together and looking for new places to perform, we thought, there's nothing restricting us to just one. What would happen if we can get 2 performances out of the set? Or even better, 3? We'd be much more efficient. Now, this is a risky strategy. It's a bold strategy. It's kind of a crazy strategy because instinctively, the last thing a struggling arts organization wants to do is increase expenses to put on additional performances. But that's exactly where we were headed. And with that, Orchestra Iowa was born. We knew that without the Paramount Theater, our audiences would decline 20% a year. And that without action, we would be out of business in 5 years. And so as Cedar Rapids audiences were declining, they had to be replaced and grown someplace else. And if they weren't going to come to us, we were going to have to go to them. And so the first thing we did, apart from presenting all of our performances in Cedar Rapids, is we established a classical and a chamber music series in Iowa City, a community 30 miles to our south, home of the University of Iowa, and where about 1/3 of our orchestra live. The second thing we did is we identified communities within a 2.5-hour radius from us. Communities that were both unserved by symphonic music and had a venue that could accommodate the orchestra. And we'd visit 2 or 3 of them a year, building audiences there. And finally, we forged partnerships with Iowa Public Radio and Iowa Public Television to broadcast our performances statewide. Now, while we were starting to expand our geography, we still had work to do at home. In fact, some in the community wanted the Paramount Theater torn down and replaced with a modern venue. Now, we knew that they didn't have the money. We also knew that we didn't have the time. But more importantly, the Paramount Theater was the heart and soul of our community. It's the cultural crown jewel. Everybody had a Paramount story. I'd be stopped on the sidewalk and somebody would tell me about going to the movies there with their grandparents as a child, or maybe a first date, or the last thing they saw there was their daughters or granddaughters' dance recital. No, we had to restore that building. And here I found myself in a very unique position of having never been to a performance at the Paramount, joining the front lines of trying to save the theater. And in the end, the city of Cedar Rapids, which owns the Paramount, not only decided to rebuild the Paramount, they decided that it would be the first city building restored post-flood. We had now established ourselves as a steward of the theater, and we were heavily involved in its restoration, pushing for needed modifications. We extended the stage house by 20 feet. We increased the size of the orchestra pit. We installed a sprung dance floor. We improved acoustics, enhanced audience amenities, and we connected the Paramount Theater to our building next door. And when the hall opened in 2012, we'd become so synonymous with it that the venue management company contracted us to be their partner. We now manage ticketing operations for everything at the Paramount Theater. Yes, we replaced that other for-profit ticketing chain that we won't mention. We contract our marketing services to outside promoters. We sell food and beverage concessions to enhance the audience experience. We publish our own in-house program magazine, and we produce a non-symphonic presenting series that brings major international artists to Cedar Rapids that otherwise would never perform there. And in our own building next door, we created the Opus Concert Cafe, a 99-seat performance destination. And now, Opus is the contemporary counterpart to its historic neighbor. It's got upscale finishings and furniture, LED lights, theatrical sound and video. Our bar serves fine wine. That's questionable. It does serve craft beer. In addition to our own chamber music series, we present jazz and cabaret and comedy. It's a much sought-out event space that we make available for rentals when we're not using it. And because this is where we connect to the Paramount Theater, this becomes our VIP donor lounge. We open this up exclusively before concerts and intermission to our Opus Circle, which are donors that give us $1,000 or more. And since opening Opus, this donor group has not only grown by 100%, but their donations have grown by 250%. we invest heavily in education. In fact, 2/3 of our orchestra services are free of charge educational performances in elementary schools, in public libraries, where we bus children into the Paramount Theater. And this isn't just an investment in our future audience, this is good citizenship. We understand the importance of arts education in developing the whole child, which is why we created the Orchestra Iowa School, where we offer early childhood music programs, instrumental lessons, music therapy, choral classes, ensemble coaching. We have more than 500 students come through our doors every week. But the biggest game changer for us has been collaborative partnerships. Now, 4 years ago, we officially became the pit orchestra for the Cedar Rapids Opera Theater, giving them a fully professional orchestra for the first time and adding weeks of services to our musicians' contracts. Well, 2 years ago, we deepened this relationship. As we brought them into the Paramount Theater, we offered ticketing and marketing and operational support. We even put their productions on our subscription series. And the result, opera attendance went from 900 per production to 2,500. Prior to the flood, the only professional dance that Cedar Rapids saw was a touring nutcracker that came every 2 years to the Paramount Theater, and they performed to canned, i.e. pre-recorded music. Well, now that the orchestra was operating the theater, this was blasphemous. So we decided that we were going to present the nutcracker ourselves, and in fact, we'd even toyed with the idea of performing to a film version, kind of artistic payback for all those ballet companies out there that don't use orchestras. But then we met Ballet Quad Cities, and this is a company located in Davenport, Iowa, 2 hours away, so they're within that radius. They're a young company, about 15 years. They're an energetic company. They are artistically hungry, willing to do anything. And like us, they realized that the key to their very survival, let alone growth, was expanding their audience market outside of their home base. And so it was a match made in heaven. And that first year, we not only produced the Nutcracker, but we also did Cinderella. And they were huge successes, artistically because they were phenomenal. Operationally, because there are not a lot of ballet companies their size using live orchestra. And there's certainly not a lot of orchestras our size presenting professional dance. But financially, they were successful because of economy of scale. For ballet, we rehearsed 3 times, and then we performed 6, 3 in Cedar Rapids, and then we moved the whole production to the Quad Cities. And with this formula, ballet is practically paying for itself through ticket sales alone. We're up to 4 main stage ballets next season. And last year, we partnered with a theater company for our first musical theater production. We sold 4,200 tickets for that weekend. These collaborations have been incredibly beneficial. Each organization has been building their patron base by sharing audiences with the others. The creative process is stretching the capabilities and capacity of the organizations, and the end product is just so much more than what any one institution could have done on their own. And by sharing ticketing and marketing and finance and operational services, every organization has reduced their cost, more efficiency. The old model is that performing arts organizations are supported by a 3-legged stool: ticket sales, contributions, and endowment. At Orchestra Iowa, we've diversified and expanded to include tickets, ticketing fees and marketing services, school tuition, concessions, rentals, advertising. And we have found that 9 legs is much more stable than 3. 5 years ago, just 5 years ago, we were a struggling $1.5 million orchestra that performed to 20,000 people per year. Today, Orchestra Iowa is a $5 million arts enterprise that reaches 100,000 statewide. And while disaster may have prompted us to act, our success was not the result of a flood or a magic bullet or a secret potion or an angel donor. You know, cultural institutions, running a cultural institution is really like steering an aircraft carrier. You can't turn on a dime, and you can't change course without considerable momentum. In 2008, we realized that business as usual was no longer working, and we defined where we wanted to be in 5 years. It was going to be bold And we were going to create a plan that would be audacious and big, and it was going to capture the attention of all around us. We not only changed our name, we recreated our brand. We forged partnerships that stretched our capabilities. We embraced innovation and adopted business models that redefined what it meant to be a symphony orchestra. And we filled our toolbox not with what we needed at the time, but what was going to serve us in the future. We were perhaps one of the smallest orchestras at the time to join the Tessitura network, but I guarantee you we would not have become Iowa's largest performing arts organization without it. David Novak, CEO of Yum Brands, has a quote that I think really sums up our philosophy. It's easier to make a powerful idea practical than a pedestrian idea powerful. This is an incredible time for our industry. The standards of excellence among artists is reaching new heights. Exciting works are being created every year, as are new ways to engage us with those works. And society's thirst, their need for a live, shared experience has never been greater. If we give them something to be excited about, if we can give them something to believe in, if we can give them something that will transform their lives, then the possibilities are limitless. This is our story, and I wish you all the same success. Thank you very much.